Hey guys, excuse that noise. My daughter is going ham on her jumper. Um, so I just wanted to go ahead and talk with you guys about my son, have a little chit chat. In my other video, my apartment tour, I did kind of mention that my son has health problems. So instead of just continuing to mention that he has health problems, I wanted to go ahead and just get into that whole story. Um, so I'm not even sure how far back to go, honestly. And again, excuse that noise. My daughter is having issues, honestly. So I got pregnant with my son at 18. I know which is young, but I was in a good enough place in my life that it wasn't like a huge setback. So I had been with his dad for about 3.5 years before I found out I was pregnant. I didn't actually find out I was pregnant until I was like 3.5 months along. I kept taking pregnancy tests, but they came back negative. I knew I was pregnant. It was like a whole thing. So let's just jump right into the worst parts of it. So I was about 5.5, 6 months along when they told me he was coming. I freaked out. They put me on bed rest. They gave me steroids to go ahead and jumpstart his lungs to give him the best chances possible. So they also gave me like some other medications to try and push off labor. Of course, none of these things were 100%. It was just one of those things where it was worth a shot. So I did everything that I was told. I got really lucky. They went ahead and, or he didn't come until about a week before his due date. So I was so blessed and so lucky that he made it that far. I was in labor for like 36 plus hours total. I get there, they're like, we want you to walk, we want you to do blah blah blah, like X, Y, and Z. To just get everything going, basically. Sorry, I had to just pick her up because she wasn't having it. So, I pee in a cup for their tests that they run, whatever, and I lay down so that they can track my contractions, like normal, before I get up and I walk and I do all of that. So, the nurse comes in and she's like, "Don't get out of bed. We want to go ahead and go over everything with your doctor. The doctor's going to come in and he's going to tell you about some test results." So I'm like, instantly, I'm freaking out. My mom and my boyfriend are there with me, of course, and they're talking me through, the breathing and calming down, and it's not that big of a deal, everything's okay, those sort of things. I'm like, okay, you're right. I can do this. This is fine. I'm going to be okay. The doctor finally comes in and just drops the bomb. Not even gently gets into this. He's like, "You have preeclampsia." And I'm like, "Okay, what is that?" He's like, basically, your kidneys are starting to shut down. I don't know why they didn't. My daughter is climbing over the wall. I don't know why they didn't catch this beforehand, because I was going every 2 weeks because of because of like all the other medical issues I had going on. So right off the bat, I'm like, why didn't you guys get this? So he's like, "You could die in delivery. Your son could have medical problems." And at that point, I just quit listening. Thank God my mom was there, because as soon as he was like, "You could die," my boyfriend obviously was just like blank face. He was done. You could tell he was not listening anymore. I listened up until the point when they're talking about how my son could have problems, how he could possibly not make it. And after that, I then was like, blank face, I'm done listening. Luckily, I had my mom there who is in the medical field, so to that aspect, I she was there to kind of coach me through everything that was going on. So he's like, or it's a she. She's like, I'm gonna go ahead and give you some pitocin. I'm gonna get this kick started. We're going to monitor everything very closely. So we did all of that. Hours and hours and hours and hours later, they're like, okay, it's time to push. I pushed for like 4.5, 5 hours total. After about 4 hours, my mom's like, you guys need to do something. Hi, what are you doing? What are you doing? I'm sorry. She's like right up on me. What you doing? So she's just like, my mom's kind of freaking out at that point. Like, do something. She obviously cannot do this the natural way. So the doctor ignores her. She is so mad at that point because I've been doing this for hours and we're not getting anywhere. I mean, nowhere with me pushing. So then my son's heart rate starts to fluctuate. It drops really low and then it goes back to normal and then it drops really low and then it goes back to normal. And at that point, my mom is like, do something. So then the nurse like goes and gets another doctor. The other doctor comes in and she's like, just rest for a minute. We're gonna go and consult. So I'd say like 15 to 30 minutes later, they come back in, and the only reason they came back in is because my son's heart rate starts going crazy. I mean, like, it drops, it comes back, it drops, it comes back so often. So it's obviously like beeping, sending them alerts. So the doctor comes in and she's like, we need to do an emergency C-section. I'm like, okay. I'm freaking out. I'm like, my mom's not going to be there because obviously like the father wants to go into the room and you can only have one person in the C-section room. So I'm like, okay. I'm crying, like hysterically. I'm so scared with, the preeclampsia and everything else. I don't know what's going to happen. My mom stayed, I'm trying not to tear up. My mom stayed really, really strong until I was going into the back doors and I could see her crying, which is very, very rare. I'm sorry. So my daughter's over here. So we go, everything. They, lay me on the bed. They do everything. They take him out. I see him for like a split second. They're weighing him. All of that. And my boyfriend at the time is sitting there and he's, talking to me and telling me about what's going on. And I'm like, okay, I feel so lucky that everything was okay. And then if you've, obviously, like, you can't feel your C-section, like, pretty much at all. However, I did. They ran out of anesthesia or whatever. And so at one point, I could feel them cutting into me. I could feel them pulling. It was awful. I was like screaming that I could feel it before they would listen. And they gave me more drugs. So after that, I could still kind of feel what was going on, but it wasn't painful. So they go ahead. I'm like looking over at my boyfriend who is like looking at him and he's telling me about what's going on and everything. And then I just feel like in the pit of my stomach that something is wrong. They then pick up my son and they tell my boyfriend at the time that they need to leave. My boyfriend like instantly is like giving me like this face, like he's scared. He like begs them to let him stay into the room because he doesn't want to leave me. I'm sorry, it was just so scary. Of course they don't let him. They kick him out and they take my son. After I only saw him for like a second. So I then like just remember being so she's turning on the Xbox. So cold. And I could like see my boyfriend for probably like a good 30 seconds before I'm sure they threatened to call security on him because I could see him outside of the door, like the little windows. I could see him standing there. And then he left, so I'm sure they threatened to call security or whatever because I could hear them like yelling. I couldn't really hear what was going on because I was so incredibly cold. I mean, it's normally very cold in there, but this is different. Like, the only way I know how to explain it is to, like, to my core, I was freezing. And not just like it's snowy outside, you're standing outside and it's cold. I mean, just like my whole body, my muscles, everything was so cold. So I'm like trying to listen to the doctors because they're not explaining what's going on to me at all. Stop it, Grace. No more. So sorry, my Grace is trying to play with the Xbox. So they're telling me like they're basically not saying anything to me in that aspect of what's going on. And then I like black out. I just remember like a little bit in and out of consciousness. I black out. I come to, and like I can hear my mom. The only thing that I think is what woke me up was I could hear my mom outside of my door. And at that point, I didn't know where I was. I was in a different room, but I could hear my mom, and she's like yelling that she needs to see me. My mom doesn't normally, she's not one of those people. Don't get me wrong, my mom is very loud. My mom is very like outgoing. She's very outspoken. She's not afraid to say what's on her mind, but she doesn't normally make a scene. But here we are in the hospital. I'm in a different room. I'm in a lot of excruciating pain, and I'm very, very sick. Like, I feel like I'm going to throw up. I'm very nauseous. I'm very dizzy. I have an awful migraine. But I can just, like, hear my mom, and she's screaming that she needs to see me, and that she needs, like, confirmation that everything is okay. My mom comes into the room, and she's, like, crying because she can't believe that I'm okay. They, I guess, had went out, and, well, when they had told my boyfriend at the time to leave, he was able to go and tell them that I hemorrhaged. Awfully. After the fact, my boyfriend at the time was telling me that, like, you could hear the blood splatter. Like, when I hemorrhaged, it was so out of control. He said that, like, it sounded like an overflowing sink. Like my blood hitting, going from the table to the floor, like, it made this huge splash. There was blood everywhere, and that's why he didn't want to leave. He knew what was going on. So I nearly died. Like, the doctor comes in with my mom, and my mom's not hysterical by any means when she's in the recovery room with me. She's very, like, quiet, and she's just, like, holding my hand, and she's crying, but trying to hold it back, and she's telling me that, like, she loves me, and that everything is okay. And the doctor comes in, and he's like, you're very, very lucky. Like, we thought we lost you. I hemorrhaged that bad. I lost so much blood, which is why I got so cold. So then I blacked out because I lost all of this blood, and they couldn't get it into me fast enough. They weren't ready for it, which to me is crazy. They already knew that I was gonna have problems, that I was already sick. So I guess like they should have been a little more prepared for the worst case scenario, which was what happened. So I had to have 2 blood transfusions. They bring my son into the recovery room so that I could see him. They waited to give him his bath to see that if I was going to make it so that I could see it. Not like a bath, but like a sponge bath. And that was like the only time I could see him. Recovering, I had to stay in the hospital for like a week and a half. I did finally like throw a tantrum and they sent me home early. Just a few days, nothing crazy. But yeah, I had to have 2 blood transfusions. I do have kidney problems from having him. My son is very high risk for having kidney problems. He's a very sick kid. He gets sick all year long. Like in the summer, he gets sick. In the winter is awful. I'd say probably like 2 times a month he gets really ill. So in that aspect, the like delivery, the pregnancy, it was all very rough on him. I have a lot of health issues now because of it. My son has a lot of health issues now. We're always on high alert for him. And after the fact, I was like, after the horrible hospital experience that I had, she's knocking stuff over, and the doctors were rude, the nurses were rude, it was terrible. After all of that, I was just like just so happy that I was alive, that my son was okay. I mean, yes, they told me that he was going to have a weak immune system, but we give him vitamins. He eats healthy. In that aspect, I'm so very lucky. However, people tell me all the time, like, you should have sued. You should have, like, been compensated in some type of a way for the horrible experience and the lack of care for me and my son. At the time, that's not what I wanted. I didn't care. I wasn't gonna go after the hospital or the doctors or the nurses because the whole experience was terrible. Like, just the negligence alone. So, but that's not what I wanted. I was just happy. However, today, when I look back on it, like, yeah, I should have made a bigger fuss, not necessarily sued, but made a bigger fuss, made them try and change their ways for the next person who was like me. It wasn't about the money for me, but I wish that I would have thought about trying to make it a better experience for the next person. So that's basically how my son got sick. I'll have to make another video because this one's already super long. I'll have to make another video. I will go ahead and make another video later on, if that's what you guys want, about what exactly he has. He does see specialists and stuff. I can go ahead and make another video if you guys are interested in that. So thank you so much for listening to my awful story. Sorry about the tears and my daughter being loud. Go ahead and give it a like, comment. I'd love to hear if any of you have any advice on things to give my son to maybe boost his immune system, better vitamins or something. Please leave me a comment, and I'd love to actually have a conversation with somebody who knows what this is like, because I don't have anybody in my family who is like this. go ahead and please subscribe, and I will go ahead and knock out a couple more videos for you guys. Thank you again.